On July 2, 1943, at the Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily, the pilot of the Fokker-Wulf 190 remained oblivious to the P-40 Warhawk descending swiftly from the skies until bursts of machine gun rounds ripped into his plane's body, causing it to plunge in a wild spin toward the landscape of Sicily far beneath. In that moment, First Lieutenant Charles B. Hall, a 22-year-old hailing from Brazil, Indiana, achieved something that leaders in the German Luftwaffe had deemed utterly unattainable. An African-American aviator had downed one of their premier fighter planes. That day, the swastika marked on Hall's P-40L Warhawk marked the initial victory in a tally that would reach 112 enemy planes brought down by the airmen whom the Germans, according to reports, later dubbed Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Bird Men. In the Third Reich, the prevailing racial ideology branded individuals of African heritage as Untermenschen, subhumans deemed unfit for operating sophisticated equipment or showing valor on the battlefield. The Nuremberg laws explicitly prohibited unions between German citizens and those of African origin. Nevertheless, high over the Mediterranean in those perilous skies, this pernicious worldview stood on the brink of a devastating confrontation with undeniable truth, as 992 skilled aviators hailing from Tuskegee, Alabama, proceeded to shatter not only enemy planes, but also the Nazis' entrenched beliefs in Aryan dominance. Unbeknownst to the German airmen ascending to challenge U.S. bombers during 1943, they were on the verge of engaging the cream of the crop among the United States Army Air Force's pursuit squadrons. Individuals who had surmounted barriers unknown to their Caucasian peers, who had endured more intensive and protracted preparation than typical flyers, and who shouldered in the fray not merely the call of patriotism, but the profound responsibility of validating the potential of their whole community. The equations governing dogfights in the air were destined to unfold dramatically above the European continent. With 15,000 combat sorties flown, 1,478 missions completed, 112 enemy planes downed, and a rate of losses for bomber escorts far below that of white fighter units, these figures alone would compel the staunchest Nazi zealots to reckon with the utter failure of their doctrines on race. That inaugural triumph in the skies traced its origins not to the heat of battle, but to the oppressive backdrop of racial division within the United States. Back in 1925, a study from the U.S. Army War College entitled Employment of Negro Manpower in War asserted that, in comparison to whites, blacks possessed a clearly lesser intellectual capacity and displayed an innate deficiency in moral fiber. According to this formal evaluation by the armed forces, African American troops simply did not have the smarts required for handling complex equipment or the bravery needed to guide frontline operations. Nevertheless, while top brass held fast to such biases, a determined cadre of black citizens had begun dismantling those notions through their own actions. Eugene Bullard, denied the chance to fight for his own country, had instead taken to the skies on behalf of France during World War I. In 1921, Bessie Coleman secured her aviator's certificate in France, a necessity born from the refusal of every U.S. flying academy to admit her. During the ensuing decade, the Coffey School of Aeronautics in Chicago had successfully prepared scores of African-American non-military aviators, underscoring that proficiency in the skies transcended any divisions of race. As tensions escalated with the threat of conflict looming across the Atlantic, advocates for equality ramped up their demands for transformation. Figures such as Walter White from the NTALT-ACP, along with labor organizer A. Philip Randolph and Judge William H. Hastie, pressed tirelessly for the integration of African Americans into armed forces air operations. Publications serving black communities, including the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Baltimore Afro-American, relentlessly challenged the Roosevelt government with a pointed inquiry. How could the nation champion democratic ideals overseas while withholding them domestically? Then, on April 3, 1939, Public Law 18 marked a tentative breakthrough. Through an amendment proposed by Senator Harry H. Schwartz, the legislation mandated that the Civilian Pilot Training Initiative incorporate at least one school, or possibly more, selected by the Civil Aeronautics Authority, specifically for instructing Negro aviators. Though this yielded to prejudice through enforced separation, it nonetheless represented an initial step forward. As Franklin Roosevelt campaigned for a historic third presidential stint in 1940, securing support from African American voters in vital urban centers of the North became essential. Subsequently, on January 16, 1941, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson revealed the establishment of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, composed entirely of black personnel, as an aerial outfit. Yet this declaration carried a qualification that exposed the armed services' underlying assumptions. The squadron served as a trial to determine if African Americans possessed the capacity to undergo preparation as fighter pilots. In April 1943, Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. felt the full burden of leadership as he guided 26 pilots from the 99th Fighter Squadron into North Africa. As the offspring of the nation's inaugural African-American general, Davis had previously weathered 4 years of isolation at West Point, during which fellow cadets of white descent refused any personal conversation with him beyond required formal interactions. At this juncture, he was at the helm of a unit whose members shouldered personal ambitions alongside the dreams of 13 million African Americans. Upon reaching Farjuna in Tunisia, the 99th integrated with the 33rd Fighter Group, led by Colonel William W. Momier, a leader who openly voiced doubts regarding the capabilities of African American aviators. Rather than involving them in frontline engagements, Momier directed the squadron toward routine patrols across the Mediterranean Sea. His intent was for them to falter, providing him justification when their performance fell short of instant perfection. On the morning of June 2, 1943, the group embarked on its inaugural battle operation, a strike against the island of Pantelleria, under Italian control. While the battle-scarred P-40 Warhawks of the Tuskegee Airmen ascended toward their objectives, enemy German interceptors materialized without warning. The pilots from the squadron maintained tight discipline, shielding the accompanying bombers from harm. Neither side suffered any downed planes in the clash, yet the Germans quickly grasped an initial truth. These aviators refused to yield amid the chaos. Everything shifted irrevocably on July 2, 1943. At that point, Charles Hall was undertaking his 8th sortie, providing cover for B-25 Mitchell bombers as they struck the Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily. A pair of Focke-Wulf 190s charged aggressively at the bomber group. In his later testimony, Hall recounted, "I spotted 2 Focke-Wulfs trailing the bombers immediately following the bomb release. I maneuvered into the gap separating the fighters from the bombers and succeeded in getting the advantage on the Germans during the turn. I unleashed an extended volley, watching my tracer rounds strike the second plane. It had been banking leftward, but abruptly lost control and plunged directly earthward. Upon Hall's return to base, jubilation swept through the entire installation. The African-American support staff, who had weathered endless derogatory remarks from white colleagues over many months, at last possessed a resounding rebuttal to all the disrespect. This triumph marked the inaugural confirmed air-to-air victory achieved by an African-American pilot within the annals of U.S. military aviation. Come January 1944, the 99th Fighter Squadron had logged 7 months of active engagement. Though Colonel Maumier had submitted a harshly critical assessment, alleging deficiencies in their initiative and urging their withdrawal from frontline duties. That evaluation made its way to General Henry Hap Arnold, setting the stage for him to terminate the entire initiative. But then arrived the pivotal moment at Anzio. On January 27, 1944, the German Air Force unleashed enormous assaults against Allied troops holding the Anzio beachhead. 15 members of the 99th, still relying on outdated P-40s, confronted far more advanced Focke-Wulf 190s above the fray. The ensuing action would permanently muzzle the detractors. Over the course of 2 days, the 99th claimed numerous enemy planes, with accounts differing on the precise tally, ranging from 8 to 13 downed foes. Captain Charles Hall secured 2 additional triumphs, elevating his personal tally to 3. Operating with subpar aircraft over just 2 days, the unit had eliminated a greater number of hostile planes than during the entirety of their prior 7 months in battle. The War Department initiated an investigation that pitted the 99th against fellow P-40 outfits, ultimately determining that their effectiveness matched that of white-piloted squadrons. The achievements witnessed at Anzio demonstrated unequivocally that African-American aviators were capable of outstanding performance in warfare, provided they received fair chances. By May 1944, the 332nd Fighter Group, formed by merging the 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd Fighter Squadrons, obtained directives destined to elevate them from marginalized figures to enduring icons. Their new assignment involved integrating into the 15th Air Force to serve as guardians for bombers, undertaking perilous extended sorties penetrating far into the heart of Nazi-held territory in Germany. At Ramatelli Airfield, situated along the Adriatic shoreline of Italy, Colonel Benjamin Davis assembled his aviators. Losing even 1 bomber is unacceptable, he emphasized to the group. Becoming top-scoring pilots isn't our goal. Ensuring those bombers return safely, that's our mission. This guidance would shape the essence of their approach to aerial warfare. No matter the circumstances, they were to remain glued to the bomber's formation. Come June 1944, General Nathan Twining mandated the implementation of a structured identification scheme across fighter groups. Every unit would be assigned unique hues to allow for swift visual recognition. The 332nd Fighter Group received orders to adopt red markings. This went beyond mere accents like red noses or stripes. Instead, their complete tail assemblies were coated in a bold crimson hue. Those P-51 Mustangs, sporting vivid red tails along with matching propeller spinners and nose stripes, quickly gained a signature look that set them apart. When bomber formations first benefited from these red-tailed guardians, the crews had no idea their defenders were African-American pilots. All they recognized was the unwavering loyalty of these aircraft, which hugged their charges tightly and resisted the lure of simpler targets. gossip began circulating among the bomber squadrons. If possible, call for the Red Tails to cover you. On July 18, 1944, the Red Tails faced their most grueling challenge yet. Leading the way, Colonel Davis guided a force of 66 Mustangs toward a planned link-up with bombers headed for a Luftwaffe airfield in Memmingen, Germany. The heavy aircraft arrived behind schedule. In that moment, Davis reached a pivotal choice. The pilots of the 302nd Fighter Group chose to circle protectively over hostile skies instead of heading back to their airfield. As the bomber formation at last came into view, the German Air Force responded in kind. Around 100 enemy fighters swarmed in from various angles. The Luftwaffe had discovered that sheer volume of attackers could shatter the defensive barrier formed by the Red Tails. Even with the 332nd mounting a determined resistance and reporting 11-12 shoot-downs, enemy aircraft claimed 15 B-17s during a brutal 20-minute clash. The group suffered the deaths of 3 aviators, Lieutenants Robert Hutton, Wellington Irving, and Alfred Brown. Detractors argued that such heavy casualties among the bombers demonstrated the inability of African-American flyers to manage large-scale engagements. Yet a review of the mission's records uncovered the real story. The 332nd had flown into a dire scenario where enormous German squadrons were already hammering the bombers. Their intervention averted a total catastrophe. Come March 1945, the Luftwaffe's traditional propeller planes struggled to contest the overwhelming dominance of Allied aviation. Still, Germany held one final ace up its sleeve, the Messerschmitt Me 262, recognized as the pioneering jet fighter in active service. Capable of reaching 540 miles per hour at peak velocity, it left all piston-engined planes far behind in pursuit. On March 24, 1945, the 302nd Fighter Group faced its toughest mission yet, providing cover for bombers on a 1,600-mile round-trip journey to Berlin, targeting the Daimler-Benz tank production facility. Reports from intelligence indicated that Me-262s operated by Jagdgeschwader 7 would guard the site. Colonel Davis commanded 43 P-51 Mustangs straight into the core of the German homeland. Nearing the capital, the jets materialized, marking the biggest concentration of jet interceptors ever gathered for one operation. Lieutenant Roscoe Brown had thoroughly analyzed the aircraft's vulnerabilities. "We understood that the German jets outpaced us," he recounted. "Rather than charging straight at them, we veered off in the opposite direction before swinging back to exploit their vulnerable angles." Brown achieved a victory against one MiG-262, describing his approach. He climbed at a 15-degree angle toward the enemy aircraft and unleashed 3 extended volleys from a distance of 2,000 feet, positioned at his 8 o'clock. The enemy pilot ejected almost right away, descending from roughly 24,500 feet. Lieutenant Earl Lane accomplished a feat that struck many as unfeasible, downing a MiG-262 through a deflection shot spanning 2,000 yards with the aid of the innovative K-14 computing gun sight. Lieutenant Charles Brantley secured the day's third triumph over a jet. Eliminating 3 MiG-262s during this one clash surpassed the number of such aircraft that most fighter units managed to destroy across the full course of the conflict. In just one afternoon, the Red Tails had surpassed the cumulative tally of all prior U.S. successes against MiG-262s. For their efforts in this operation, the 332nd Fighter Group received a Distinguished Unit citation. Victories did not mark every clash between the Tuskegee Airmen and their German adversaries. 32 pilots ended up as prisoners of war, and their ordeals highlighted the intricate tensions between Nazi doctrine and the harsh facts of combat. On his 19th sortie, Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson went down on August 12, 1944. While targeting radar sites with low-level attacks over southern France, his P-51 absorbed flak damage. During the subsequent questioning, the German interrogator displayed a wealth of knowledge regarding the 332nd Fighter Group. As Jefferson later remembered, the officer was aware of Ramitelli Airfield, the identities of squadron leaders, and even specifics about his family's residence in Detroit. He understood that Jefferson's father worked as a teacher and knew his mother's birth name. The depth of their espionage efforts proved alarmingly meticulous. Within the confines of Stalag Luft III, Jefferson experienced treatment on par with that of fellow American officers. Prisoners of war who were white and hailed from bomber units frequently expressed their thanks to him for the safeguarding provided by the Red Tails. Such exchanges, which would have been unthinkable amid the racial divisions of the United States, unfolded effortlessly in the midst of German captivity facilities. Jefferson could hardly overlook the bitter paradox of it all. Here I was, in a Nazi POW camp, being treated more equally by white Americans than I would be back home. Upon the conflict's conclusion and his repatriation to America, segregation awaited him right away at the arrival station. Although German aviators are said to have recognized the Red Tails' prowess through the moniker Schwarze Vogelmännchen, it was the U.S. bomber personnel who emerged as their fiercest advocates. For these individuals, confronting mortality with each sortie, matters of ethnicity held no sway. Only the imperative of enduring took precedence. The pilots of the bomber squadrons crafted their unique lore surrounding the Red Tails, sharing tales of the group's signature aerial maneuvers, the friendly wing dips they used as salutes, their disciplined close-knit squadrons, and their steadfast commitment to staying with crippled bombers until the end. These escorts earned the affectionate title of Red Tail Angels from the bomber personnel. The numbers backed up the favoritism shown by those crews. A study conducted by Air Force scholar Dr. Daniel Hallman indicated that, under the protection of the 332nd Fighter Group, just 27 bombers fell to hostile fighters, in stark contrast to the typical 46 losses experienced by other P-51 units within the 15th Air Force. Such exceptional safeguarding held firm even as the Red Tails tackled some of the war's most extended and perilous assignments. When the conflict concluded, the Tuskegee Airmen had amassed a battle history that shattered all the outdated prejudices regarding the prowess of black service members in combat. They executed 1,578 combat missions overall. Their pilots logged more than 15,000 individual sorties. Among these were 179 bomber escort operations. For the 15th Air Force specifically, they undertook 301 missions. In terms of aerial victories, they downed 112 enemy planes during dogfights. Additionally, they eliminated 150 enemy aircraft while they were stationary on the ground. On March 24, 1945, they accounted for the destruction of 3 Me-262 jet fighters. Regarding strikes on ground installations, they wrecked 950 rail cars, trucks, and motor vehicles. They also demolished 254 locomotive engines. Furthermore, on June 25, 1944, they inflicted irreparable damage to the TA-22, which was once the Italian destroyer Giuseppe Missori. As for their defensive achievements, only 27 bombers were lost to enemy fighters under their watch, against the standard 46 for comparable units. They upheld this outstanding level of coverage throughout all 179 escort duties. Notable personal accomplishments among the pilots included those of Lee Archer, who secured 4 confirmed aerial victories. Joseph Ellsbury also achieved 4 triumphs, among them 3 FW-19s downed on July 12, 1944. Edward Toppins tallied 4 victories of his own. Clarence Lester, meanwhile, claimed 3 kills during a single mission on July 18, 1944. In terms of honors bestowed, the pilots of the 332nd Fighter Group received 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses. The group as a whole earned 744 Air Medals, along with 14 Bronze Stars and 8 Purple Hearts. The 99th Fighter Squadron was awarded 3 Distinguished Unit Citations, while the 332nd Fighter Group garnered 1 such distinction. The price paid in lives was steep. 66 pilots lost in combat, 32 taken as prisoners of war, and 84 fatalities during training or other non-combat operations. The shift from derision to admiration went beyond mere bravery alone. This demonstrated the exceptional U.S. training techniques and the technological edges that the Red Tails employed with remarkable accuracy. During their time at Tuskegee, the pilots accumulated far more flight hours than those of white pilots, 300 hours versus just 200. They drilled relentlessly on maintaining tight formations, fully aware that such rigorous discipline would prove decisive in battle. Tuskegee's attrition rate stood at 60%, higher than the 40% among white trainees. Just the elite few made it through the demanding regimen, forming what Colonel Noel Parrish, the base's commanding officer, described as an exceptionally elite cadre. The sequence of planes they transitioned to revealed volumes about their journey. For the 99th, it started with outdated P-40 Warhawks handed down to them, which were already passé by the time the unit reached North Africa. The fighters equipped with liquid-cooled Allison engines fell short of the German Bf-109s and FW-190s across nearly all measures of capability. Nevertheless, the Tuskegee aviators leveraged the P-40's exceptional maneuverability in turns and its durable build to stand their ground effectively. When P-51 Mustangs arrived in July 1944, this upgrade elevated the Red Tails to the level of the finest fighter groups in the conflict. The North American P-51D Mustang embodied the pinnacle of U.S. manufacturing excellence. Powered by its Packard-built Merlin engine, it achieved a maximum velocity of 437 miles per hour. Equipped with .50 caliber machine guns, it had the firepower to take down any enemy plane. Above all, its impressive endurance, exceeding 1,600 miles when fitted with drop tanks, enabled it to accompany bombers on missions deep into the Reich. For each pilot credited with downing a German plane, a team of support staff, including mechanics, armorers, and crew chiefs, labored tirelessly to ensure the Red Tails remained airborne. Among the roughly 16,000 Tuskegee Airmen who contributed to the war effort, less than 1,000 served as actual pilots. The others formed the overlooked backbone whose efforts secured success. Operating under severe constraints, the ground teams performed extraordinary feats to sustain the operation. The airfield at Ramatelli in Italy stood out as rudimentary when measured against other U.S. installations. Resources like spare parts remained in short supply, leaving the 332nd Fighter Group frequently at the end of the queue for essential materials. Nevertheless, their rate of aircraft readiness for missions, the proportion of planes fit for battle, matched or even surpassed those of segregated white squadrons. These maintenance teams encountered enemy fire as well. While attacks from the Luftwaffe on Ramitelli occurred infrequently, they proved devastating when they struck. During a raid on March 24, 1944, German bombs claimed the lives of multiple ground support staff. Undeterred, the personnel pressed on amid the chaos, maneuvering planes clear of the infernos raging in the fuel storage areas. The massive Allied air offensive across the European theater served as the definitive proving ground for the Tuskegee Airmen. Every B-17 Flying Fortress came with a price tag of $238,000 and housed a crew of 10 skilled aviators. When even one such aircraft went down, it delivered a tactical blow that echoed across the broader military campaign. Protecting these heavy bombers thus carried greater weight than racking up dogfight kills. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. grasped this priority, directing his flyers to forego the urge to pursue enemy interceptors. As he put it, downing a fighter proves easy for anyone willing to shirk their duty. True resolve lies in holding formation with the bombers as foes flee. Over time, the Red Tails refined their protective strategies based on hard-won lessons. They crafted a tiered shield. The inner layer involved planes zigzagging tightly overhead to guard the formation, the middle tier stationed to block approaching threats, and the outer tier scanning for high-altitude plunges. Implementing this approach demanded flawless teamwork and unwavering self-control. The Tuskegee Airmen waged dual battles during their service, confronting fascist forces overseas while enduring racial discrimination within the United States. Their impressive achievements in the skies directly undermined both the Nazis' notions of racial superiority and the nation's policies of segregation, demonstrating that skill in dogfights rose above any divisions based on race. As they clashed with German forces in Europe, these pilots simultaneously resisted bias on American soil. Their triumphs against the Luftwaffe garnered prominent coverage in African American publications, yet received scant attention or outright dismissal from the dominant media outlets. The Pittsburgh Courier's Double V initiative, which sought triumphs over tyranny abroad and prejudice domestically, spotlighted the Tuskegee Airmen as key illustrations of this dual pursuit. The disparity in recognition between the two sides could not have been more pronounced. By the end of 1945, German airmen were said to have a precise understanding of the operators of those distinctive red-tailed Mustangs, referring to them as Schwarzer Vogelmännchen. In contrast, a large segment of white Americans remained unaware that African American aviators even served in the military. Such lack of knowledge stemmed from intentional oversight. The War Department seldom highlighted the accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen. When the Allied forces secured victory in Europe, the airmen faced not jubilation, but rather an uneasy future ahead. As white squadrons geared up for triumphant processions, members of the 302nd grappled with uncertainty regarding their prospects. Even with clear proof from the battlefield highlighting the folly of racial division, the Army Air Forces intended to uphold segregation. In the years following World War II, the accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen stayed mostly hidden from the broader public in America. Each aviator contended with this deliberate overlooking of their contributions. Lee Archer, credited with 4 confirmed kills, pursued a career in management, yet seldom discussed his wartime exploits. "Nobody believed me anyway," he remarked. "A black fighter pilot? Must be lying." President Harry Truman enacted Executive Order 9981 in 1948, which desegregated the United States Armed Forces. a move shaped by the exemplary service of the Tuskegee Airmen in battle. Benjamin Davis, the commander who had guided the Red Tails through missions above Berlin, rose to become the Air Force's inaugural African-American general in 1954. Acknowledgement arrived gradually. The Tuskegee Airmen received the Congressional Gold Medal from President George W. Bush in 2007. Just 300 of the initial pilots lived long enough to be present at the ceremony. For numerous survivors, this honor followed more than 6 decades of anticipation for official acclaim. The shift from derision to admiration proved no mere legend, but a reality backed by historical records. The statistics stand as unassailable proof. A total of 112 triumphs in the skies over the Luftwaffe. In a single sortie, 3 Mi-262 jet fighters taken down. On the ground, 150 hostile planes eliminated. Just 27 bombers sacrificed compared to the typical 46 from other units. Pilots of the 332nd Fighter Group claimed 96 distinguished flying crosses. Known among foes as the Schwarzer-Vogel mention, these aviators demonstrated how bias dissolves in the face of proven prowess. Each Luftwaffe plane felled, each bomber shielded, each assignment fulfilled, built an unbreakable argument. A flyer's skin tone bore no relation to his skill in the air or in battle. Roscoe Brown, the man who downed a German jet above Berlin, captured their legacy in a few words. We didn't just fight the Germans. We fought ignorance, prejudice, and hatred. And we won all 3 battles. Far beyond mere victories, the Tuskegee Airmen reshaped the course of events. They waged 3 conflicts at once and emerged victorious in every one, overcoming the Luftwaffe through sheer combat skill, undermining Nazi doctrines of racial superiority with their results, and ultimately eroding U.S. policies of racial division via their superb accomplishments. Provided with a chance, the Tuskegee Airmen rose to unparalleled heights, turning derision into admiration, bigotry into recognition, and adversaries into observers of their remarkable feats.